Winter Roses, Autumn by Fairytalelovr, Chapter 22. Before I start, I'm so sorry, there were technical issues that led to this getting deleted before I uploaded it. Anyway, here we go. All in all, Marwyn had been expecting something very much worse. The castle was indeed much simpler than those in the south, even the few he had seen on the journey north. But it was not falling apart. Any more, it seemed, as he could see builders working on the roofs and towers. "Archmaester Marwyn to see you, Maester Aemon," the steward announced, opening the door for the library. The room was dark, no candles lit and no other light than a roaring fireplace, but the Archmaester could smell the knowledge emanating from the shelved volumes. "Aemon," he greeted, "I have missed your wisdom." The elder man laughed. "Ah, that I doubt. You are the one with a higher rank." "Rank?" Marwyn snorted. "Useless thing. I have the rank because you fled here and you very well know it. What happened to your sleeve?" He frowned. "Oh, is it burnt again?" Aemon felt for it. "Well, it is salvageable. I am afraid the cold winds grow colder up here, my friend, and cold is terrible for my old bones. Fortunately, I have a way of keeping warm." "Dragon blood!" Marwyn chuckled, amazed. "You're fireproof?" "I wouldn't go that far. A hotter fire, a forge, for example, grows to be uncomfortable. Now, come, sit. You must be cold and weary from your journey. You never explained. Why come this far?" "Lord Stark had some interesting stories to tell," Marwyn said as they took their seats next to the fire. Marvelled at how Aemon pulled up his sleeve and put his hand back into the flames unafraid. "Have you gotten news of this conspiracy of the Grey Sheep?" "Not yet," Aemon said. "Lady Starling sent me a letter telling me to be careful, but not much more." "Well, I brought one of my acolytes to stay with you. Trustworthy eyes. But let me tell you." "Before you bring me news, I have something to share," Aemon said. "It's about the prophecy." "The prince who was promised?" Marwyn asked, and the other nodded. "You told me you thought it meant Rhaegar. I went to King's Landing, gave him the scrolls, talked to him about it, because you were convinced it meant him. After the way he was born, amidst the salt and smoke of Summerhall. But he is dead, Aemon. Long dead." "I know. But you used to say that prophecy is a bewitching mistress. Have you changed your opinion?" Aemon asked. "I have not." Marwyn narrowed his eyes. "Did he forge the sword? Is that how Lady Lyanna died? Because he tempered it with her blood?" "Where is it?" Then he gasped, opening and closing his mouth. "You can't mean a bewitching mistress! Symbolism! Is that what you meant?" "What do you know?" Aemon asked. "She died in childbirth," Marwyn said quietly, though they were alone in the room. "Their son was born bathed in her blood, and she perished soon after." "Lightbringer," Aemon confirmed, equally as quiet. "Not a sword, but a baby boy, who will lead us through the war." But the rest of it? Bathed in the princess's blood he may have been, but there was no bleeding star." "There was," Aemon said. "Through some inquiring, I have discovered that, to gain access to his sister, Lord Stark and his men fought the King's Guards stationed at the tower. He managed to disarm Arthur Dayne, defeating him in single combat, and then rushed to the princess, with Dayne's sword in hand." "Why is it?" Marwyn gasped again. "The Dayne sword! Dawn! Forged from the heart of a fallen star. And if there was a duel, the sword was stained in blood. A bleeding star. In a tower surrounded by the sand of the desert. Gods, it all fits!" "I asked you to guide Rhaegar all those years ago, my friend," Aemon said. "Jon is our best hope, Marwyn. He is the promise we have been expecting for 5,000 years. The enemy is already moving south, preparing to attack, and Jon remains unaware of who he is
and how important he is. So I must ask, would you guide him?
Marwyn only nodded. The grey sheep had tried to slaughter the dragons, and all this time, it was the dragons who had been promised to save them. Maybe that's why your family is so hard to kill, he said, because the gods made you to save us all.
I like to think that is sheer force of will in there as well,
Aemon said with a smile, though he couldn't help but agree. Targaryens had survived the doom of Valyria, family fights, the dance of dragons, maesters conspiring to kill them, and rebellions set on eradicating them. It was certainly more than pure resilience. Gilly was ignorant to the wedding customs of the free folk, only used to the abhorrent ceremony in which Craster's eldest wife tied a ribbon around the new one and the disgusting man that... And then all the women were forced to watch the bedding. That had been an altogether terrifying and humiliating experience. But right now, she felt happy and even giddy. Jon had met her in the entrance hall of the fortress, complimented her beauty, and then led her to the Godswood, where she could only smile at seeing Sam waiting for her. Benjen had spoken, then Sam spoke, and Jon gave her away, and suddenly she was married. But rather than her sisters staring down at her with pity, her new friends and the guests were celebrating, cheering as they went back into the castle and into the great hall, where the banquet was expecting them. Everyone was simply happy, and Gilly was astonished at how her life had changed so drastically, and all because Sam had been kind to her. "Time for the first dance!" Tala, her new sister, yelled halfway through the night. "Now, Tala," Sam moaned. "We're fine, You're on your way to the dance floor, yes," Dany said, standing up, Ren ready to shoo them out of their chairs. "Come on, Sam, it's tradition." Sam didn't stop groaning all the way down from the main table. "I'm sorry if I step on your feet," he said. "Jon and Rob tried to teach me, but I'm not much for dancing." Gilly laughed, delighted. "It's all right. Dany and Alla taught me. Dany said I should take the lead. It seems Jon doesn't like dancing too much neither." Sam chuckled, but let her lead. They danced, swaying from side to side, as the minstrels played a thankfully short song. And then the dance floor began to fill up with other pairs. "Are you happy, Lady Tarly?" Sam asked. She giggled, giddiness filling her. Lady Tarly. Once upon a time, she thought she would live a miserable life and then die in that frozen hellhole, haunted by the disgusting man who had both sired her and married her. But now she was in the south. Well, in the north, but south of the wall. In a nice castle, surrounded by friends and family. Her husband was a loving man who cared for and loved her, and her son was upstairs, sleeping safely in the nursery, not being sacrificed to evil monsters. She would never have to fear for her life or her sons or any children she had. She was safe and happy. "I don't think I've ever felt this happy, Sam," she said. They smiled at each other, lost in their love as their wedding feast roared around them. It was in the middle of the afternoon when Jon was sent runners to gather the entire family. "What is it?" Dany asked once they were in the family room. "This just came from father," Jon said with a smile, and everyone was anxious. "I proudly announce that we have a new sister, Lady Serena." "Is she well? Are they both well?" Rob asked after a round of celebrations. "Ella was resting when we left. How was the birth?" Jon passed him the raven scroll. "My dear son, it is with delight that I announce the birth of your new sister, Lady Serena Stark. She fares well and is very healthy and hungry. Your stepmother is also well, though she had a bit of a hard time with all the anxiety. But the Maester assures she will recover quickly. We shall visit at a year's end if Maester Byron judges appropriate. Love, Lord Eddard of House Stark, Lord of Winterfell,
Lord Paramount of the North, Warden of the North, and Hand of the King.
How long do you think it will take until Arya tries to take her for a ride? Rob asked with a huge smile.
Probably longer than what it will take for Sansa to try to bring her to an embroidery lass.
Jon joked back.
But they'll both have to get through Ella first.
Everyone laughed, and Jon called for a toast. Truth be told, Jon had been surprised that it took nearly a fortnight for him and Dany to finally pick up their argument from King's Landing, though he had wished to avoid it forever. "Do you want me to sit here and wait for them to call for my head?" Dany yelled, her face red with fury. "Because Robert may be quiet now. Maybe he won't ever do anything, because he respects father and because he likes you. But once he dies, do you think that will hold? The moment Robert Baratheon dies, the moment Tommen becomes king, the Lannisters rule the realm, Jon. Tommen may be away from Cersei now, but he will heed her words. The Lannisters won't rest until I'm dead."
"If it comes to that, we will fight back, Dany. They will never find an easy path to you, I swear. But I can't just agree to war because—"
"I want to protect us!" Dany exclaimed, frustrated.
"Can't you see that you would be doing the opposite?" Jon yelled back, equally frustrated. "If we start a war without provocation, Dany, then we are the villains of the story. Power-hungry and greedy. We don't have the men. We don't have the money. And winter is coming. We don't know how long this winter is going to be. We can't waste the supplies we have. And the Dornish alone are not enough."
"The North will join us."
"I can't force my father's hand," Jon snapped.
"It won't be forcing. He would side with us, Jon."
"He is Robert's hand."
"To protect us, Jon," Dany yelled. "He is Robert's hand because he knows what opening the handship to the Lannisters will do. He stayed in King's Landing because Robert is a shitty king and the realm needs someone with brains to rule."
Jon exhaled. "Dany, even with my father, even if we have the Tyrells and the Martells, if, for some miracle, the Tullys honour their blood tie to Robb and don't decide to ignore it because of how Catelyn lost everything, a war this big, thousands would die, Dany. We would spend money and supplies we desperately need for winter. I can't just agree to it. I have to think about the thousands of men who would lay down their lives for our house. About the thousands of children and women and elders who would starve because we sent all our food to the troops. And I have to think that right now, as uneasy as it is, we are safe, Dany. But if we start a war and lose it, we won't only be our heads decorating spikes. It will be Lyanna's and little Adam's as well. And if you don't believe me, you should simply remember what Tywin Lannister ordered done to Prince Aegon and Princess Rhaenys. How Elia Martell ended up. Your good sister. Your niece and your nephew. If that's how you want to end up, that's your problem. But you are not dragging my children into this mess with you."
He turned to leave. "Our children!" Dany roared. "Do you really think I would allow—"
"I doubt your brother thought about allowing any harm to come to his children. But shit happens, Dany. I will not drive us and the rest of the realm into a fucking war because of a chair."
"A throne! My father's throne! The ancestral throne of my family! My throne!"
"The ancestral people of your family are dead, Daenerys. Our family is here. Now. It's me, you, Lyanna and little Adam. We are the ones who will get killed. Fuck them and fuck the Iron Throne. If taking it is the way to protect us, then we take it. We burn the Lannisters down, but we take it. But not while it can get us in danger."
"We won't be in danger," she insisted once more. "We have more allies than they do. The Lannisters will band with the Baratheons, but we can beat them."
"At what price, Dany? Thousands of dead, thousands starving." She breathed out, furious and annoyed, but aware that there was no counter-argument to that point. "You're not seeing the big picture, Dany," Jon softened. "You're thinking about safety. In your mind, you've decided that the Iron Throne means safety, and you want that. You're not seeing beyond that. You're not seeing the thousands that will suffer because of it. We will fight back if we must. But can we be selfish and rise in rebellion without provocation?
You are right, she conceded unwillingly. Just remember that while Rhaegar and Lyanna ran away together, the provocation for the last rebellion was the murder of your uncle and grandfather. She burst out of the room in a whirl of skirts, her blood racing in her veins, burning up in anger. Jon punched his desk, making everything on it rattle. Ghost poked his arm, and he petted the dire wolf's head, but he was too furious. Grabbing Longclaw from the stand nearby and wrapping the belt in place, he stomped out of the room.
"Got it settled?"
Adam asked once Jon came into the corridor.
"We're going riding,"
he said in lieu of answering.
"I'll take that as a no,"
the knight said, unperturbed.
"She's too stubborn," Jon complained. Adam snorted. "You do know hypocrisy is not a virtuous quality, right?"
"I am not," Jon started, but then saw the look on the other man's face and cut himself short, admonished.
"Fine, we're both stubborn, but she's more stubborn than I am. I believe Isla once said something along the lines of it being like the pot calling the kettle black."
Adam said, highly amused. Jon huffed, even more furious, and just continued on their way silently. Ella was smiling as she went into Ned's sala. "A little bird had just brought me some news," she said. "Well, you look to be in a very good mood." Ned smiled lazily and extended his hand out, pulling her to sit on his lap, which she took. He balanced his goblet on the side table and passed both arms around her.
"I should have kicked Baelish out years ago. Willis is the perfect man for the job. He's still learning all the books, but he's already having great ideas how to make the treasury flow better."
"Not to mention that Willis doesn't annoy you," she said fondly. Ned cocked his head to the side and reached for the goblet, taking a sip. Ella took it from his hands and tried it. "Is this Dany's new wine?"
"Aye, they gave us a few bottles, and I felt like having some tonight. I would have waited for you, but I know you can't drink."
"I wish," she muttered. "My milk didn't come this time around." "The whole anxiety," Mr. Byron said. "Much like what happened to Dany with little Adam."
"I can't imagine how upsetting this must be,"
Ned said. "Well, Serena is here, and she is healthy. I much prefer that to having breasts filled with milk and no baby to drink it." Ned hugged her strongly, knowing there was nothing to say. "But I don't want to spoil the good mood," she said after a moment. "Baelish is gone, and you are happy."
"Aye. Which reminds me, I was speaking to Lord Manderley about getting a ship ready, and he said you have already made the arrangements with him. I would have thought you would have jumped at the opportunity."
"Normally I would have," Ella said, "but I don't know how keen I am to pretend I don't know the castle, or the people. Besides, I spoke with Alaria. Serena is too little. I'm not leaving her behind, and I can't bring her with us." She understood. "Sansa and Arya will represent us."
"Forget representing House Stark," Ned said in a quiet voice. "It's your sister's wedding."
"I know, but I'm not risking our newborn daughter on such a voyage. Nor am I prepared to leave her and go away so far. I'll visit when Alaria is to have her first child."
"If you are sure,"
Ned said, and they were quiet for a few moments.
"Oh, you said you had news?"
"Oh, yes. Lord Varys said he just heard gossip from the Vale."
"Oh, yes. God, what has Lysa done now? I am one headache away from taking the regency from her and giving the Eyrie to the boy, to Lord Royce."
"Well, I don't know if it is a headache or the potential for one, but I doubt we'll be celebrating it," Ella chuckled. "Lady Arryn made an announcement. She is to marry Lord Baelish as soon as possible."
"I thought he loved Catelyn."
Ned was shocked. Ella snorted. "Baelish is slippery and calculating enough to love himself above all. Whatever he feels or doesn't feel for Catelyn, she is in the sept now. But if he marries Lysa,
He's got control of the Vale, Ned finished the thought. Others take him, he cursed. If I take the Regency now, rather than kicking him out of the small council, I might just start a diplomatic crisis.
Well, call it lucky stars if you want. But you sent Lord Royce a raven warning him of Baelish's departure, didn't you?
Aye, I knew he would go back to the Vale.
Well, it seems Lysa is a bit complicated. Lord Royce took Robin on a tour of the Vale, and, as the other Lords Declarant were eager, Lysa couldn't refuse. He was in Runestone when Baelish arrived. Royce and the Wainwoods tried to keep him there and wrestle control of the Vale in the name of peace for the newlyweds.
Lysa may go for it, but Baelish won't, Ned said with an eye roll. He'll try to wrestle control back.
It's a Vale matter, Ned. You have nothing to do with it. You're not all that involved.
Maybe, he exhaled heavily. Unless it becomes a full-out war for the Lord of the Vale, then the Iron Throne will have to interfere.
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Right now, let them sort out their own issues.
Fine, Ned grumpily agreed. I'll have Varys keep an eye out, just in case. Civil war in the Vale might not be the worst possible thing that could happen right now, but that doesn't mean it would be nice.
When is war ever nice? Ella wondered. Isla burst into the room furiously, making John shrink back in his chair. This is bordering on ridiculous, she said. Patrick, collect these linens and unmake this makeshift bed. She pointed to the sofa John had made into a bed for the time being. You are the bedchamber. You can sleep there. Patrick lowered his head and rushed to do as he was bid, trying to get out of the cellar as quickly as possible. Aunt, John started. Don't even try. Your mother put me in charge of you, and that does mean taking her place and knocking some sense into your thick, stubborn head when I must.
You shouldn't be yelling, Aunt, John said, concerned. Now,
I am the midwife here, not you. She folded her arms on top of her baby bump, visibly annoyed. If I didn't know any better, I would say you were dropped on your head as a baby. But I know I didn't do that, so I know that's not the problem. The problem is your thick, stark stubbornness clashing with Targaryen temper and causing a whole fucking mess. And I am allowed to curse when I am telling you to grow a backbone and go and make peace with your wife.
Aunt Isla.
Between you, Danny, and Benjen, I know quite well what's going on. What I do not know is why you are playing the fool.
Why are you not telling Danny to apologize? It's her.
There is no fault in an argument such as this. There are only two different sides with two different views. And I have told her to apologize, and she is quietly sitting down and waiting for you to make up. You are husband and wife, two adults. You don't have to go around ignoring each other like tantrumy children.
I can't do what she wants me to do,
he said. Then calmly tell her that.
I have. She's the one who blew up.
Well, then, try again. Shoo! Isla pushed him. And I won't hesitate in locking you two up in a broom cupboard until you've talked and made up if I must.
John snorted, finding the image hilarious, and knowing it wasn't an empty threat.
He found Danny on the balcony, looking equally chastised.
I say Aunt Isla got to you too, he said awkwardly.
She slapped some sense into me, Danny conceded. Motherhood and Dornish temper are apparently a dangerous combination. Then she took a deep breath. I understand your argument about safety and the money and supplies for war. I had not thought that far.
And I apologize for making it sound like you wanted to take the throne for vanity, John said, stepping up and next to her, taking her hand into his.
She exhaled and smiled sadly. As soon as Robert dies, this war will happen, John. Even if it's in the middle of winter.
I know, he exhaled heavily. But we will be ready. I'll increase investment in the army and the navy. Your wine got enough requests to justify increased production, so we might have more revenue for warships. When they come, they will feel, Danny.
She smiled and let him pull her into a hug.
Happy name day,
John said, running his fingers through the loose part of her hair.
I'm glad we made up, and I can wish it.
She chuckled. I'm glad we made up as well. I would hate to pretend tonight at the feast. She laughed now. Besides, Leanna wanted to go riding with us both and won't be dissuaded.
John laughed. Not that Aunt Isla would allow our fight to drag, but let's agree to not let it go further than a few hours.
Well, with your stark stubbornness and my Targaryen temper, I'm sure we'll have enough times to perfect the making up part.
They laughed and hugged again. Dear my lady, you do not need to apologise. I will not forgive you, because I see nothing that needs forgiving. Of course you stayed in King's Landing. You needed to support your sister. And I do not think it is stupid. I think it is very noble of you. Prince Joffrey sounds like a terrible person. I only ever heard rumours when I lived in Fleabottom, but he was very disliked in the city, and I'm sure in court as well. I think few people will mourn him, especially when he died in disgrace. I have been dragging Hot Pie to lessons at least once a week, but he skips them whenever he can. And I have been badgering him for days to write to you, but he simply ignores me. He is very happy. With your indication, he got the job in the castle kitchens. He is still helping out in the village bakery when he can, but he's living up here in the dorm now. As for Nymeria, she really misses you. When the Starlings and Kristoks went south, she actually came and stayed with me at the forge most of the time, except when she and the others went hunting. I must confess, it is nice having her around. She is like a silent version of you, but still capable of telling me I'm being stupid. Not to mention how well she and Drennan get along. I look forward to seeing when you visit. Your friend, Gendry.
Marjorie laughed as they galloped across the green expanses near her new home. In the Reach, in Highgarden, the air smelled sweet with the aromas of the fruits planted all around. In King's Landing, the air carried the heavy smells of pollution, of a waste, of the sweat of too many people pushed together. At the Wall, the air was stale, old and cold. In the Midnight Fortress, it smelled like the sea, but spiced with the fire of the volcano. But here it smelled like a lush forest, like pine. It smelled pure and welcoming. She loved it immediately. She slowed to a stop next to Rob. What happened? She asked. Aren't we close?
I want to make a surprise. He was smiling widely as he dismounted and then came to help her down. Humour me?
Marjorie chuckled at her husband's antics, but took his hand and allowed him to lead her to the crest of the hill. She was loving the geography. She then gasped as the castle came into view. It was grey and huge, and even from a distance, she could guess it was ever growing. It was not perfectly designed like a southern castle. It looked like every lord had added something to it, to make it theirs, something unique. How delightful wouldn't it be to spend her life learning its secrets and watching her children brave it as well?
What do you think?
Rob asked, and she could hear the anxiety in his voice. I think it's marvellous! She smiled. Take me home, my lord husband. Take me home, and let us see what our future holds. Rob smiled widely and picked her up in his arms, twirling her around and making her laugh, carrying her back to her mare and helping her mount. Then he went back on his own saddle and they raced home. Home. It sounded so perfect. My dear father, we arrived at the Midnight Fortress and will stay for a while. Whatever the Archmaester and Maester Aemon talked about, he wants to be here. We will be leaving the castle to explore the volcano soon, as he thinks he will find something there. I will write when we are back in the castle. Love, Sorella Sand. Marjorie smiled giddily as she came back to her chambers that morning, her little package shaking in her hands.
Where did you go? Rob asked as she came in. It's too early for breakfast.
I just needed to check something, she said, and I've got your name day present. She extended the little package.
Rob laughed as he unwrapped it. You didn't need to wake up at dawn, to...
He cut himself short as the contents of the package was revealed. A pair of little woolen baby shoes.
Marjorie!
I'm with child! She exclaimed. Mr. Lewin just confirmed it. He laughed, hugging her and kissing her deeply.
This is the best name day present I ever could have gotten.
Hey, should I get rid of the actual present I have waiting downstairs? She jested. He laughed and just pulled her into another kiss. And they were late for breakfast. Cersei watched from her windows as the retinue arrived in the main courtyard. Who is that? She asked. The handmaiden only shrugged and continued on with her work. Cersei kept on watching as Uncle Kevan came down and spoke with one of the guards, watched as they moved around, and finally, a trunk was taken from the cart. She frowned. Even from this far, she could see that it was a trunk to hold a person's bones. It was simple, solid wood, with no engravings, so it held the remains of someone with little to no importance. Though, usually, that kind of people were buried in the nearby sept in a coffin, without the ritual of the embalming the Silent Sisters performed. But why would such a person have been brought to the rock? And why would Uncle Kevan have gone to receive it? But then, she stiffened. The guard was now taking a sword from the back of the cart, laying it on the trunk, and she recognized it. It was the sword she had commissioned for Joffrey after their return from Winterfell, after he had lost his old sword, Lion's Tooth, to the horrid Stark girl. Her heart faltered as she rushed out of the room, running as fast as her legs could carry her. Kevan cursed when she burst into the hall.
Send a runner to Lord Lannister and tell Lady Jenna to rush here,
he told a guard next to him. The man nodded and ran to fulfill his orders.
Your Grace, you shouldn't.
Who is that? Whose bones are these? Cersei demanded.
Cersei, please, let us go.
Kevan tried, but she wouldn't be dissuaded. Why is my son's sword on that trunk? She yelled. Answer me! I am your queen! What is in the trunk? Why is Prince Joffrey's sword here?
Cersei, you're yelling in front of the servants, Kevan warned quietly. Let's go upstairs.
Where is my son? Where is Joffrey?
Oh, but he did not.
Jenna snorted as she rushed downstairs. Come, Cersei, let's talk in private. I want to know! Cersei yelled. Jenna took her hands in hers. She understood all too well the heart of a mother. Something Tywin, clearly, didn't. And that would cost them at least a huge explosion. I will tell you, Jenna said. I thought you knew already, honestly. But I will tell you. I promise. Now, come along. Cersei blanched, completely unresponsive now, but let her aunt lead her away. They walked up and across the castle to the Lord's Solar. Tywin merely raised his head as they entered.
Cersei, it seems we must talk.
Where is Joffrey? She asked again. Tywin ignored the uncomfortable look from his brother and the reproachful one from his sister, focusing only on his daughter.
He is dead, he declared. His bones have just arrived from the capital.
Cersei laughed hysterically, and the other three only watched as she let it out. You have never been much of a jester, father, she finally said, wiping her tears from her eyes. Joffrey is not dead. He can't be. Jaime is in King's Landing, protecting him. And besides, he wouldn't have let the body arrive without sending a raven. We would have known moons ago. That is an interesting point you make, Cersei, Jenna said. Jaime did send a raven. Right, Tywin? What? Cersei whipped around. Father, you can't... You knew! She then looked around the room, remembering the reactions of her aunt and uncle. They hadn't been surprised at the delivery. They had been surprised at her surprise. You knew my son was... And you didn't tell me!
I am telling you now,
Tywin said simply, sitting back on his chair.
The boy disgraced himself and...
But Cersei roared in fury and crossed the room to him, pushing his chair and all the way to the ground. Tywin fell back, shocked, flabbergasted with the development. How
Cersei yelled. Before anyone could recover, she burst out of the room, stomping and slamming doors on her way.
End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed this one. So mostly a nice and humorous chapter, but Cersei's gonna blow. In fact, oh boy, this is... Oh, Tywin. Jeez, you really missed a punch here, dude. Though admittedly delaying it. Jeez, oh boy. Yeah. But I love the bits with Marjorie, that's great. And I just like this chapter. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.